Giant robots. Yes, I enjoy a good mecha show now and then. I'm a Transformers fan since childhood. I recently got into Gundam for the first time through Witch from Mercury. I think Neon Genesis Evangelion deserves its top tier reputation, and I've been binge watching series of Super Sentai and Power Rangers for quite some time. I do love a good giant robot. So how can we make this about the Sonic? Sonic the Hedgehog as a series has had its fair share of giant mecha robots, and today I'm going to showcase a few. We won't be talking about the Mecha Sonics, they're not giant, but I also want to dedicate a video to them at some point. But yes, as someone who has a bit of a fascination with these sorts of robots, I want to talk about some of the notable ones and less notable ones you can find in the Sonic series. I won't be going through all of them, at least not yet, but either way, let's dive into the wonderful world of big boy machines, Eggman Empire property or otherwise, and talk about their respective boss fights. Death Egg Robot, Sonic 2. The Death Egg Robot is arguably the most iconic Eggman robot of all time, and it's obvious to see why. It was the hardest boss of the classic trilogy in my opinion, and that made it all the more memorable. At that point in the franchise, it was quite clearly Eggman's ultimate weapon, housed in the Death Egg. It really lended a sense of this is it to the battle. It was awesome. The robot's design is just a perfect representation of Eggman's own megalomania. It's basically a giant robot with his own face plastered upon it, something that he will be doing many, many times. I mean, talk about egotistical, because Mr. IQ 300 here is effectively wearing his own calling card. It's so difficult to hit him because even the lightest touch will end Sonic's life. It's all about timing, and without any rings, perfect accuracy is the only way to get him. It's certainly a fierce fight. As such, the Death Egg robot has been brought back multiple times, such as in Sonic 4, Sonic Generations, and Sonic Mania, with even a homage to it in Sonic Movie 2. Each update makes alterations to the machine's attack patterns. Sonic Mania's, in fact, whilst being easier, I think is a very cool fight, especially as it's the initial Act 2 boss, showing that Eggman simply isn't playing around. The giant Eggman Robo, Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Okay, I mean, if you thought the Death Egg robot was big, yeah. Even that had nothing on the giant Eggman Robo, because this boy was even more hulking. As part of the magnificent endgame to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, it housed the Master Emerald, and despite being an easier battle than the Death Egg robot of Sonic 2, it still had its own flurry of difficulties, particularly in Phase 2, when you have to make split-second jumps to avoid the beams shot at you from it. Your first attempt fighting it will be your easiest, because you'll have rings, presumably, unless you threw them away in the last boss fight. Further respawns will have 0 rings, so it's easy to fall into a death spiral from then on. So yeah, it can get dicey. But once you get into a rhythm, you can do it. It feels like such a rewarding final fight. I really like it. Unlike the Death Egg robot, where each hit is sporadic and gradual, this one is a high risk, high reward. Land as many hits as you want within the timing at your own peril, and I really like that. The Egg Golem, Sonic Adventure 2. Don't you just hate it when your golem starts going a bit haywire and tries to kill you? I mean, that's what happens in Sonic Adventure 2. The Egg Golem is one of Eggman's hidden eggs. Obviously, he got the idea from his old boy back in Sandopolis. It looks magnificent. It basically looks how you'd expect a sand golem to look, but with that robotic twist. It has a limited range of attacks mainly using its hands, but they can be devastating if you're particularly unfortunate. But also, the weak spots are magnificently obvious. I mean, it has stairs going up all the way to the core on its head. But, I'll give it its due, it is durable. It takes both Sonic and Eggman individually to take it down. But it's still probably one of the more uniquely designed bosses of SA2 from an appearance perspective. The Egg Emperor, Sonic Heroes. Oh, yes. Now this is what true evil is. The Egg Emperor of Sonic Heroes is bloody majestic. There's a distinct sense of regal intimidation emanating from it, and as the final boss, it has to be like that. It looks properly decked out with his lance and shield, and its dulled gold colour scheme. It really feels like Eggman's Neo Metal's really going for an indulgent grand approach to take down our heroes, and the only way to beat it is to just go as brute force as possible. The Egg Emperor can be a hard boss fight, the movement patterns can be unpredictable at times, and it can hit you in midair and send you to your demise. It's a both smartly programmed, yet annoying boss fight. Just, whenever you hear, CHARGE! You better hope to God your reflexes are ready. But also, that soundtrack goes ridiculously hard. Heroes in general has such a goated soundtrack. Metal Overlord, Sonic Heroes. I mean, I've gone on about Metal Sonic enough in my previous videos, but it would be remiss of me not to include him on this list. But forgive me for slightly paraphrasing myself. Metal Overlord is the end result of Metal Sonic having finally lost his mind after his constant defeats to Sonic. After leading the heroes on a goose chase to extract data, he ascends to his ultimate form in the firm belief that he has won, and will now embark on his quest for world domination just to prove a point to Sonic. That he is the real Sonic, the superior Sonic. He creates a whole new body for himself out of the debris of the Final Fortress's command tower, assembling it piece by piece, and it is glorious. Metal Overlord's design is beautiful but chaotic. He has become a gigantic mecha dragon, and it's quite a terrifying look. He has brought kaiju to Sonic once again. Of course, Metal has had kaiju forms before, such as in Sonic Mania and Knuckles Chaotix, which no doubt influenced his decision here, retroactively in the former's case. But this time, instead of any exterior power source, the transformation was all him. The fight goes into Metal's inner psychology, and just how much his fights with Sonic has crushed him, and truly reveals his desperation to just get one up on his mortal enemy. Gameplay wise, it's fairly simple as long as you're quick. Keep spamming moves to build up the Team Blast meter, unleash it a few times, and he's down. It's not the most complex battle even for a supersonic fight, but it still does feel rather satisfying when you see him plunging down to his temporary demise. Nowhere near the strongest final boss of the series by any margin, but the story compels me, so he's solid. The Egg King, Sonic Rush. This huge beast of a machine is a very impressive invention. I mean, the spectacle itself is one that is to be admired, honestly. Sonic or Blaze face this giant robot on a starship that is plummeting down to Earth at great speed. The machine has a few attacks that get more wild the more damage you do, from racking its arm onto the ship in a purely self-destructive manner, to firing its laser across the ship, also in a self-destructive manner. And then it resorts to pummeling the ship in an attempt to insta-kill Sonic, in an absolutely desperate act of self-destruction. Literally no wonder the ship is pummeling. It's being hacked to bits. The Egg King itself looks awesome though. It is a tremendously intimidating mech. I'll say the Sonic story colour scheme looks better, but I do like the pink and green of the Blaze story one. The Eggman certainly have their distinctive styles, has to be said. It's a very fun and tense boss to play, one of my favourites in Rush, and an extremely dynamic boss for the DS. It speaks to the strength of the hardware that it was able to pull this off. I mean, it was a very early title for the DS. Diablon, Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, if I had £1 for every Sonic game released in 2005 that featured a giant floating mech with two large arms that shot lasers at a hedgehog, well, you get the idea of that. Diablon is a gun mech used to take out a dark shadow, assisted by Sonic. It's an impressive, if sluggish piece of kit, but well armed with its shields and laser. Plus, it looks pretty hardcore from a design perspective. It's like an E-Series robot on steroids. It's definitely one of the weaker boss fights in the game in my opinion. I mean, for one thing, Sonic's main purpose in the fight is to be used to reach Diablon for an attack, which does feel hilariously manipulative. But in terms of story purposes, it goes to show the sheer levels that Gun is going to in order to defeat Shadow, bringing out their best guns. I quite enjoy how looming it is, and the design itself is fairly intimidating. Very solid big boy, even if the gameplay is a bit lacking. Ghost Titan, Sonic Rush Adventure. The Ghost Titan is an underrated machine, and definitely an even further technical achievement for the DS. I really like the cinematic angles in this fight. The whole nautical style gave the game a unique edge. I mean, what is it with Sega and giving their franchises nautical spin-offs that end up really damn good? The Ghost Titan itself feels like an awesome new twist on the Egg King, with a few more weapons including these fish-like missiles, cannons, detachable arms, combined with the privilege of less recklessness and more intelligence. The fact that it's one of the few Sonic bosses to actually try and keep itself out of danger throughout the fight. In fact, Sonic has to make use of cannons on Captain Whisker's ship to defeat it. Its design is superb with its colour blocking, I must say. It looks really cool, but the main thing is that final endgame segment. Once you reduce his health to 0, it goes full desperation and fires a laser both sides that gradually close in on you while it's exploding. The fact that you only win because it buckles down too close to you a few seconds away from death is so tense. It's an incredibly close fight, and that, honestly, low-key makes it one of my favourites. You can't say it didn't try. The Egg Dragoon, Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Generations, and Sonic Forces. Easily one of Eggman's best robots. There's a reason they keep bringing it back. The Egg Dragoon is just bloody awesome. No ifs, no buts. It's sleek, agile, and is armed to the teeth specifically to take on Sonic in his werehog form. It has drill arms, energy weapons, wings. It was primed for both aerial and ground combat. The sheer versatility is why it's so good. and allowed that initial boss fight against it in Sonic Unleashed to become one of the most cinematic boss fights ever seen in a Sonic game. I mean, it takes Sonic using one of its own weapons to actually destroy it. He got kinda jammy that time, as it was plummeting straight to the Earth's core as well, so blimey, talk about high stakes. It has a slightly creepy design too, being effectively a headless body until the Eggmobile is parked into it. The Egg Dragoon would come back in generations where it was more streamlined and kept up with normal Sonic, in another cinematic but also definitely quicker paced battle, which I do enjoy. It's a strong contest. Less said about the Forces version the better. But overall, I love the Egg Dragoon. It's a hell of a tactical beast and one of Eggman's finest weapons. Egg Fortress Boss, Sonic Superstars. So about that whole sporadic and gradual thing I mentioned back with the Death Egg robot, yeah, that gets doubled here. Oh boy, this one is rough. The bosses in Sonic Superstars are quite laborious, but no Sonic game has ever had me tensed up and sweating quite like the Egg Fortress boss. It's an incredibly hard fight, probably the hardest 2D Eggman mech in the franchise, because it's all about not only trying to stay on top of all the attacks it's dealing towards you, but you've also got to be aware of the various chances you have of falling into a bottomless pit. The mech itself looks incredible, I have to say. It has a very awesome samurai-inspired aesthetic with its armor plating, and once again, it has Eggman's face because he's a bloody insufferable egotist at this point. And he loves this whole role-playing malarkey just a bit too much. But I digress. Back to the fight itself, it's a slog. He has a wide range of attacks, and initially you can only really damage him by pelting missiles back at him, which itself can be an aiming challenge. When it goes into a chase, you have to play it very carefully when trying to hit him. Honestly, as far as Sonic bosses go, this is easily the most unpleasant on this list. So far. But what you do get is a real sense of achievement when you do complete the Odyssey and beat him. You also earn a promise to yourself that you will never do it again. And I'm not even going to get into the trip version of the fight against Fang, because you know what? I've never tried it and I probably never will. I honestly don't think my blood pressure needs to deal with that. So instead, I'm going to pass it over to someone who has played it, my dear friend, Channel Pup.
Fuck Fang Mark II. I mean it, he stinks and I don't like him. Now, to its credit, I can safely say that Fang Mark II is the least boring boss fight in Sonic Superstars. Cooldown animations between attacks feel just that little bit less obnoxious than they did with the Egg Fortress mech, but goddamn does everything this guy does have to be an instant kill. This is like what happens when you let an edgy kid design the final boss of your video game. Needless instant kills that don't even look like instant kills at the best of times. And yes, I think it's cute how Trip literally smashes into the fourth wall when hit by a cork, but what is this for a gameplay mechanic? Fang's big pointy nose smashes down onto the platforms with barely any warning. The thing with this boss is, generally, if you took a good chunk of the instant kills and made them not instant kills, and then put a checkpoint between phases, this would probably be a fine boss fight, maybe even the best in the game. But as per the usual, difficulty balancing is simply non-existent and completely ruins this otherwise climactic boss battle with a super cool mech design. Poor Fang. He's one of my favorite Sonic villains, but I almost always dreaded seeing him in this game simply because I either knew a boring-ass boss fight was around the corner, or just a super obnoxious one.
The Titans, Sonic Frontiers. Sonic Frontiers introduced the lore of the Starfall Islands into the mix, and along with this came the Titans, gigantic robots created by the Ancients to help them destroy the intergalactic eldritch abomination known as the End. They were then awakened by Sage for the purpose of destroying Sonic as he made his way through the islands to save Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, whilst being manipulated by the End. These machines are awesome. They are without a doubt the Sonic franchise's second best example of playing it straight to mecha anime through and through, the first being Sonic X, but that's a chat for another day. Honestly, with the lore and their portrayals, Neon Genesis Evangelion is absolutely being respected here, and they all have such startlingly different and unique designs. And they're all incredibly huge. They're super durable, outright monstrous creations that require Sonic going super to take them on. I mean, it says a lot about them that Frontiers is the first and will probably be the only game in Sonic's history to have multiple supersonic boss fights. Like, there's a total of 5 distinct battles, all with some badass songs accompanying them. Giganto is the most humanoid of them all, and his attacks are fueled by either trying to beat up Supersonic or fry him with lasers, but overall, he is a great introduction to the spectacle of these battles as it takes Sonic going absolutely all out to eventually put him down. Supersonic has never needed to fight like this before, like proper punches and kicks instead of just headbutting him. Wyvern is the aerial combatant, taking everything to the extreme in the skies. It's my personal favourite of the fights. You're dodging missiles, throwing the thing into mountains, it's absolutely epic, and I do love the QTEs as well. Then comes Knight, probably the objective best one of the fights, as you go blow to blow against this sword and shield behemoth, resulting in one of the most metal Sonic moments of all time as Sonic takes his own sword and slices him in half. And then after that, it's Supreme, the machine in which the entity of the End has been housed in. The original version of Supreme is easily the worst Titan boss fight in the game, but after the Final Horizon update, you get a second round against it as the End takes full control of Supreme, and it's one of the most hype-worthy cinematic moments of the game as you ascend to a further beyond super form and duke it out with this bestial menace. I love it. It's genuinely such a franchise standout with a satisfying climax in my eyes. It's so anime. Ultimately, Sonic's history with giant robots is long. There have been many I haven't mentioned here, some I don't care for, some I love, but ultimately this isn't the last you've heard from me on the subject. So, until next time, see ya!